when I had a real, that was like my darkest moment because the team had spent a year and a half and I came to the realization like, there's no way this game is going to work. This is not a good game.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
Yes, it is. And you realize like, okay, that's all on me. And also, it's one of those tricky things with design is that when your ideas don't work, which is all the time, but when they don't work, it's not like you put in your second best idea. Right. You're like, that was my best idea. So people are like, well, that doesn't work. So do the good one. And you're like, that was the good one. That was what I thought was a good one. So you have to go back and like, just, okay, I'm starting from scratch again. And so that was on a big scale, but that's how it is pretty much every day in design.
Incoming transmission.
Hello, Commander, and welcome back to GameSpot's 3-part series on XCOM 2. Yesterday we talked about the history of XCOM, but we stopped short in 2012 when this series made a remarkable comeback.
This story starts with the hiring of Jake Solomon, who decided to apply for a position at Sid Meier's Firaxis Games, the studio that made his favorite video game, 1994's XCOM.
You have been chosen to lead this initiative, to oversee our first and last line of defense.
I actually took a job with like a consulting firm. I was going to be a business consultant. And I even like, they gave me like a signing bonus and everything. And then I got an interview with Firaxis, who I loved. And so I went out there and I'd never seen a game studio before. They're just these really nice people in this big penthouse office. And I interviewed with Sid Meier, you know, and he showed me this dinosaur game he was working on. I was like, hey, what do you think I should do here? And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. I just couldn't believe that was a job. And so the problem was that I'd spent my signing bonus, and then I had to call the company. I was like, hey, is it okay if no? Okay, no, it's not okay. So I need to pay you back. Okay, that's fine. No. Yeah, so I had to pay back this huge signing bonus. And that was 15 and a half years ago now. And so I've been there for 15 years. I've been there the whole time, and I'll be there another 15. It's just, to me, I love it. I love the company, and so it's just been perfect.
Jake was in the door and was soon programming on some of Firaxis' most popular franchises. But through working alongside Sid Meier, his eye for design was deepening. And it was through this mentor-protege relationship that Jake began to turn from a programmer into a designer.
Sifter is my first game. I was a graphics programmer, actually, and that was a 2D game. So that was like one of the last 2D games. And I remember the big thing I did was I added alpha blending to these animated 2D animations. Nice. And the artists were like, nice, this young kid's got the stuff. And I remember I did fireworks over the cities, and we loved the King Day. So, and then after that, I actually ended up working with Sid on all of Sid's projects. So that's how I really got into design, is that then I worked on Sim Golf, and then Pirates, and all of Sid's projects going forward, Civ Rev. I worked with Sid, and that was, he's also a programmer, but obviously he's mostly a designer, and that's how I sort of learned, okay, it's great, like it's a great skill combination to be a programmer, but there's a lot to learn when it comes to design, and you know, a lot of our people have been there a long time, and learning, working for Sid for 10 plus years before I did any design work was my way of sort of picking up how we do things.
Jake was learning how to make games, but the one game he wanted to make was the same one that inspired him to work at Firaxis in the first place, XCOM. So, how did this plucky young coder get the keys to one of gaming's most fondly remembered strategy games?
You know, we're doing stuff at Firaxis, and they'd say, oh, you know, what should we do next, you know? And I'd be like, XCOM. And then it'd be like, and then it'd come up again, you know, 2 years later, what should we work on now? I'm like, XCOM, we should work on XCOM. And so they let me do a prototype, and it was terrible. It was awful. It was such a bad game, such a bad prototype. And at that point, Sid was like, okay, we're not gonna do XCOM. And that was when I went and worked on Civ Rev, and I really learned a lot from it. And then after that, after our relationship on Civ Rev, he was kind of like, you know, I think it's time for you to try again. And then we sort of started up the whole project that ended up becoming Enemy Unknown.
Creating a sequel to a game like XCOM is a monumental responsibility. How do you make something which appeals to people's love of the old games while still making it approachable for modern gamers? XCOM is a fantastic game, but go back and play it today and you'll be reminded of just how top-heavy and cumbersome it could be. It's incredibly complex, there's a lot going on. So I asked Jake, when he originally got the thumbs up to remake XCOM, how did he choose what elements to bring back and which ones to leave in the past?
Hostiles pacified.
There were a couple of cores to that, and I think one, the soldiers, you know, the fact that there was permadeath, that is what always stuck with me, is that there was an actual emotional connection with the soldiers. And this is from the original. The stakes of the game are real, a lot more real than any other game, where if somebody dies, you know, they're conscious, they wake back up or something, and you're like, well, I don't have any skin in the game. But in XCOM, you know, they would die, and then you're like, oh my God, they're gone. And when you win, you know, when you achieve victory, it feels authentic because the losing condition is serious. Like, you'll lose your soldiers. And so when your soldiers get stronger, it's an authentic sense of like, okay, I did something. I actually risked something to win this reward. And then there are the things like destructible terrain was a big part of it. Like, that's very XCOM, is to have these sort of destructive, dynamic environments, you know. And so for me, those were kind of like the core tenets. And then of course the idea that you've got this strategy layer, you've got the combat layer, research, you know, building stuff.
For a fan of the series, the relaunch of XCOM was incredibly satisfying. It captured the tension and tactical nuance of the original game, but presented it in such a streamlined fashion that the more complex aspects of base management never really felt that intimidating. It's the type of game that could only be made by a true fan of the series, but also somebody with the enormous pressure to make their first game sell. It had to appeal to fans of the series and gamers who hadn't played the original equally, an incredibly challenging task, but one Jake and the team at Firaxis made look easy.
I can't lie. There is I don't know if surprise, I don't know if that, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that we made a game, and as a team, we were like, well, this is like, we like it, it's really fun. And then there were people at the publisher, and they're like, this is really fun. And you're like, yeah, I don't know, do you trust? As a designer, I'm the type who's like, I hate all my stuff, so I'm just like, that's not good. But you know, then some more people saying like, oh, we really like it. But the question is, does it find an audience? You know, so the hardest part is like, you make something that people are like, oh, this is really fun, I like this. That's the hardest part. But then that happens a lot of times, and it's like, is there an audience for that? And this game was definitely, I think that was the big question, is there an audience? There's no game like this. You know, it's turn-based strategy. You know, there's no game like this. Is there an audience? And then we were very fortunate that, yeah, there was an audience. There was a big audience for it. And so it was a bit of a roller coaster.
XCOM went on to critical and commercial success. It received dozens of accolades, including Game of the Year awards from Giant Bomb, Kotaku, and Game Trailers. And it had commercial success across a wide range of platforms. Getting a game to multiple markets helps it sell more, but it was also key in the success of XCOM's design.
The big problem we made with our first prototype was that it was crazy overcomplicated. And I think that thinking about, okay, platforms and things like that, it helped us when we started to say like, what is the core of the experience? Like, we don't want to lose anything. And I don't feel like we lost anything because of platforms, but we had to think like, okay, if you have to have it work in all these different environments, and you have to sort of think about what's the core of the experience, what's important, that's how you design your UI, and it was actually really, really great. It was a great box to work in.
That was the story of XCOM's return, but it's not over yet. Tomorrow we talk about the difficult follow-up album, the changes Jake wants to make, and how it won't just be another underwater reskin. See you then, Commander.